Hey everybody, just me again, Wayne. Time for part three of my three-part interview with Christopher Hilton, author of the book The Spectacular Rise, Fall, and Rebirth of Hair Metal. You can get Christopher's book, which is a fascinating read, I think anyway, because I'm into late 80s metal, and I read the book in one day, and it is not a thin book. Of course, it's all I did that day, but still, you can get the book through Amazon for your Kindle or in print form, or you can order it through Christopher's website, hairmetalforever.com. Watch the video, enjoy the video. If you have questions or comments, leave them below. Okay, here it is, part three of my interview with Christopher Hilton. I hope you like it. Is there anything that you would like to say or that you would like me to say to help you sell more copies of the book?
Oh, no. I didn't write the book to sell copies for sure. I mean, I wanted a lot of people to read it, not to make money off it, because kind of like albums, there's no money to be made in writing books. I only wrote it because, well, first of all, I wrote it because I love the music. I absolutely love the music, and fans of this style of music, if there's anything we love more than the music, it's talking about it. And
Yeah.
there's so many great books out there about this style of music, but they're all generally band biographies. You
Yeah.
can read The Dirt, or you can read Sebastian Bach's book, or Steven Tyler's book, or Slash's book, or Vince Neil's book, and I love them all. But I had never seen a book that was about the genre, right? There was nothing out there that covered the genre itself and all the bands, and I just thought it was a great story, right? I mean, it had this huge meteoric rise to fame in the '80s and became this huge commercially dominant thing, and then all of a sudden it had this almost overnight dramatic fall from grace, basically went extinct, and then had a legitimate rebirth and sustainability over the last couple of decades. I just thought that in itself, whether it applied to music or it applied to anybody, was a heck of a story, right? So I just thought there was a story that had to be told that wasn't told yet. I pretty much I wrote the book that I always wished someone else had written so I could read it. So that was my only intent in writing the book, is that, if there's fans out there, and I know there's so many of them that love the music, especially because we grew up, we keep referencing this, in a non-internet age. Like today, if you like a band and you're a young person, well, you know everything about that band, and you know everything that happened to them while they were making the album and what went into the songs, and
Mm-hmm.
you've seen a billion pictures of them. But back in the '80s, you didn't have that. There was no internet. You had what you read in Metal Edge, or Rip, or Hit Parader, or Kerrang. And if you were
Circus.
lucky, you saw them once a year on tour, or you got to see them on MTV. And so there's a lot of stories out there that fans have never heard. And I wanted to share those stories because they're amazing, right? I mean, I can't take any credit. I didn't do these things. I can only write about them. But I kind of wanted it to be more like one of those VH1 behind the musics, but in a book that told
Right.
all these backstage stories and what went into the makings of the albums. And so I just wanted to do something for fans that, hopefully gave them something where they said, hey, I never knew that. This is cool. Or, hey, I forgot about this band and this album. Let me go listen to it again. Or I get so many people who are so kind to reach out to me and say, I had never heard of this particular album or band that you mentioned. And so I went and checked them out, and I love them, and I'm listening to it all the time. I mean, that's so nice to hear. So I just wanted something special for the fans, because I think fans of this genre, they're special people, and I love them all.
I think you've just given me that segment that is going to start the interview.
Okay.
I mean, because it just, I mean, when someone is speaking about something they love, they're speaking about it from the heart. It's just, it's it is rare and precious, he
Well,
said.
was it Mark Twain who said, write about what you know? And to that, I would add, write about what you love. And there's nothing I love more than hair metal. And for better or worse, there's nothing I know more than hair metal. So there you go. You got yourself a book.
When people disparage the musicality of, the sort of the late 80s pop metal bands, they're generally wrong. Because they were all at least competent, but boy, there were a few whose musicianship just blew everything else out of the water. Like Winger is an example. Red Beach is phenomenal,
Oh, blow
or
you away.
oh man, or Dokken, George Lynch,
George Lynch, yep.
one of those incredible guitar players. And I have no idea where I was going with this. I was leading to a question, and it just kind of disappeared into the ether. Oh, I know what it was. Yeah. Um, what are some of the hair metal bands that you would argue are a particularly fine musical accomplishment?
Well, I think there's pockets of them, right? Outside of entire bands. There's definitely individual musicians, right? And certainly none of this would be to take away from any other bands who don't show up on a list like this. Like a band like Poison, they'll admit themselves, these are not, overly technically proficient musicians. At least they weren't to start. Getting a good vocal out of Bret Michaels was tough on Look What the Cat Dragged In. Cece DeVille, yeah, he was trained under the great Isaac Perlman. But again, Cece DeVille has a style all his own, and you either love it and you hate it. Ricky Rocket would be the first to admit he wasn't necessarily the best drummer, and Bobby Dahl had one of the best quotes I've ever heard. You probably heard it. He said, "Hey, I didn't want to be a musician when I grew up. I wanted to be a rock star." And that is exactly what I became. So there's a difference. But yeah, when you talk about, especially the very, very early 80s, down on the Sunset Strip, you mentioned George Lynch. At that point in time, it was Randy Rhoads and it was Eddie Van Halen and it was generally George Lynch. And these were your guitar heroes, certainly. These guys could do things that nobody else could do. Certainly the entire Van Halen band, and David Lee Roth differentiates himself not necessarily as a technically proficient singer, but as probably the greatest charismatic frontman of all times. If frontman will allow you some leniency on your technical vocals. Def Leppard, for all the grief they take, are a pretty talented group of musicians. You mentioned Winger, all of them. Let's see, who else is in there? I think Tesla was a pretty accomplished group of musicians. Vito Bratta, how could I forget him? The guitarist for White Lion, just an amazing talent. I thought Tom Kiefer is extremely talented across multiple instruments and as a songwriter and a vocalist. There's no shortage of talent out there. You look back, the singer from Steelheart was certainly an amazing vocalist. Slash was a tremendous guitarist. I mean, Axl could do things that, love him or hate him, and he's an acquired taste or he isn't, had quite the talent for what he did. There was a lot of pockets of it. I'd probably have to think harder to I'm leaving somebody out, and that's not fair just because I'm off the top of my head, but I'm sure there are other examples in there.
I expect there are. That was a good answer, actually. And that was actually far more inclusive than I had expected. So that's awesome. I'd never even heard of Angel Down until I read about it in your book.
Oh, that's amazing.
And oh yeah, I think it's phenomenal from beginning to end. I love that album now. In fact, I'm going to do a video on rock that I nearly missed. And that is going to lead. That's going to lead the charge there.
It's a beast of an album, right?
Oh,
I mean, he really, that's some of his best performances, I think, as a vocalist. Certainly not better than what he'd done on the first couple albums, but really up there. It's my favorite solo album from him by far and away. The thing that differentiates that album, a couple things differentiate. The production on it is fantastic. It's just amazing production. The album sounds like $1,000,000. It's got this big, heavy, beefy sound, and it just doesn't get much heavier than the performance he put into that. Now, of course, at the time, he was still expecting, to put something of that quality out and have a platinum record. And I think he was really upset that he didn't get that kind of commercial response from it, but it just wasn't to be at that time. The day had passed for that.
Right.
But that is an amazing record. I mean, I thought it was 1,000,000 times better than something like Subhuman Race, for sure.
I would agree. Do you think it would have sold more? And maybe not. But do you think that it would have sold more copies if the first two tracks had been swapped around? Because, if anybody who happened to be not a hardcore fan would start to listen to it, a casual fan, as soon as Angel Down kicks in, they're going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm done. And then they're going to tell their friends, oh, this sucks, right? But the second song is
more melodic, yeah.
It's hookier, as it were.
Yeah, so, I don't think it would have sold a single copy different either way. I really don't. I mean, if this were back in the 80s, when, it had so much attention to what single was the first one released or the sequencing on the album, that stuff all made a difference back then. Absolutely. At the time that album was released, I don't think it made any difference at all, not even an ounce of difference. That album was going to sell what it sold based on, how many people were still around that, first of all, knew Sebastian Bach was putting out a solo album, because a lot didn't, or, had the desire to still listen to that. I think sequencing and those subtle nuances had long passed the genre by that point.
You might be right. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mentioned that I saw both Maiden and Priest on their recent, album support tours, and I haven't seen a hair metal band in years. I mean, the closest that I came to seeing a hair metal band was I saw Def Leppard, about 15 years ago. And
Okay.
it was Def Leppard and Queensryche and no, I'm getting my tours mixed up. It's Def Leppard and Styx and some Foreigner, right?
Oh, I remember that tour. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it was. I was thinking of Halford, Queensryche, and Maiden, who toured in 2000. That's where I got sidetracked. But anyway, at the Maiden show that I saw in early 2018, there were lots of these old dudes like me, but there were also lots of kids, and not drugged there by their parents. I mean, teenagers who clearly could get there, under their own steam and paid their own money to come hear Maiden. I would argue that Maiden and Metallica are probably the only remotely heavy metal bands that can still sell out stadiums on every continent. I mean, not necessarily every state in the U.S., but when I saw Priest, then later that same year, even though Firepower is a phenomenal record, it was all old fat guys like me. And their wives, if they managed to talk them into coming along. My son is 30. I think he was the youngest guy there. 'cause
It's
he
not
was,
surprising. It really isn't.
you
But
know,
there are more younger people at these shows than you think.
that's my question.
Now the bands like to make it sound like a lot more than I think it is. Like you'll see interviews with Motley Crue saying, "Hey, half our audience is now 25-year-olds," and I don't think that's true by any stretch of the imagination. But there are some younger folks there, more than I would think, that, to your point, weren't necessarily drugged there by their parents. I don't understand how that's happening. I really don't. I don't have a good feel for that. I think the craziest example of that, you're familiar with the band Steel Panther, right?
I'm semi-familiar with them.
Okay.
I
If you ever go
I'm
ahead.
familiar with the song "Fucked 17 Girls in a Row Last Night,"
Yeah,
and
that's that. That's certainly them. If you
yeah,
go to a Steel Panther show, and again, for those that don't know Steel Panther, I mean, it's basically like a celebration of all things 1988 or 1989. And they're an amazing, amazing group of musicians for sure. And half of you will think that they are in absolute love with that music, and half of you might think they're making fun of it, and the other half, that's three halves, will think they're celebrating it. But either way, you go to a Steel Panther show, and first of all, it's packed. It's packed every single time. Now, again, they're not playing stadiums or arenas, but the majority of the audience is like 28-year-old females. I don't know how, and these are not young guys, not at all. I don't know how they're doing it. I really don't. If anyone can ever figure that out, let me know. But there are more young people at these shows than you would think. But yeah, for the most part, it's old folks like you and me, and that's fine. We're still living our glory days for at least that one Friday or Saturday night, and we'll be with the bands probably till both of us aren't around. But it is interesting to see some young people around, and good. It's encouraging, especially when you think about this scene, particularly as it relates outside of the U.S., particularly in the Nordics. If you go to Sweden today and you hit the club scene for the night, it doesn't look entirely different from the Sunset Strip in 1988.
really.
A little bit fashion-wise and a lot bit music-wise. This music never went out of fashion in other countries necessarily like it did in America. And in fact, in Asia in particular, in the mid 90s, a lot of these bands went over there to tour and were very successful. The Asian market was very big on these bands, specifically the ones that could write the power ballads. They liked the softer songs.
Oh,
So bands like Firehouse and Steelheart in particular could go over there and still sell out big 15 to 20,000 shows. But today, up in particularly Sweden and Finland, some of the bands up there, Reckless Love or Crazy Licks or Crash Diet or one of my absolute favorites, Hardcore Superstar, this music is still very much in vogue, or this style of music. And no, it doesn't sound exactly like, to your point, pop metal from the 80s, but it certainly borrows a lot from what you and I would think of as hair metal when we think of, hey, aggressive guitar-based sleazy music that has some melody. It's still out there. You just got to look a little harder these days.
awesome. That's well, I mean, it's Wasp. I don't know when the last time Wasp played a show in the United States, right? But they're in Europe all the time, it seems. And who was I listening? Oh, Eddie Trunk or someone who was responding to a caller and is saying, well, of course Wasp are going to play in Europe, because Blackie can get his whole stage rig, into the places and people come and pay money and listen to, listen to the band. Where in the US, he can't even fit his microphone stand into the place that will hire them.
So
So
are you gonna get yourself a ticket to the stadium tour if it ever happens?
if the Wasp stadium tour ever happens, sure.
Not the Wasp tour. I don't think we're gonna see Wasp in the stadium. But if we can get Motley Crue and Def Leppard and Poison in these stadiums, maybe next summer, are you gonna go?
I don't, that's purely a fiscal question.
Okay,
Um,
it
I,
won't be cheap.
oh God, no. Yeah, no, I would absolutely go if I could afford it. I saw uh, you know Kiss on one of the first dates of their alleged farewell tour, and somehow got really good seats, pretty close to the stage. Well, by pretty close to the stage, I mean between 5 and 10 yards, but that's still and I got these for well under $100 a seat. I should
Wow.
say my wife got them. So if yeah, if I can pay under $100 a seat and not have to use binoculars to see the bands, absolutely, I'll go to that stadium tour. And if Wasp is a special guest, then I'll.
Hey, you never know.
You never do. All right. Well, I've taken up almost an hour of your time, but may I ask you one more question?
You can ask me as many questions you want. I talk about
Oh,
hair metal all day, every day.
okay. All right. Let's say someone is, for whatever reason, not familiar with the genre,
Okay.
but they want to be, or they at least want to sample it. What are 3 or 4 bands who are, putting out, good quality material, either still or maybe they're newer bands that you would recommend someone check out?
So they have to still be putting out new material? That makes the question a lot harder.
Yeah, it does. It does.
If someone wasn't familiar with the genre at all, I might actually start, and I'm not ducking the question, but I would actually point them backwards first, just to understand what this music was about back when everything that it was about was in vogue, right? I mean, again, back in the 80s, again, it was all about excess and partying and literally, it's cliche, but nothing but a good time, right? And I would have them check out some of the music and even the pictures of the bands at the time and the videos just to get a feel for the lifestyle, because it was as much about the lifestyle sometimes as it was about the music. And I mean, you could pick any number of bands, but if you're looking for some that are most representative of the genre, or maybe offered something that another band didn't, I would point them to Motley Crue. And you can love them and you can hate them, and there's a lot to love about them and there's a lot to hate about them, I promise. But if people are trying to know what the genre was about, I mean, you can't not think of Motley Crue. You can't not think of Bon Jovi. You can't not think of Poison. For better or worse, I mean, I would never call them hair metal, but I would probably tell them to go check out Guns N' Roses. And after that, it maybe a dealer's choice. Maybe you say, hey, go listen to Pyromania or Hysteria, or go pick up Dirty Rotten Filthy Stinking Rich or Skid Row's debut album, or go listen to something by Rat. Definitely go listen to something by Rat or Cinderella. Or if you want to go earlier, go back to the seeds of hair metal, and go pick up, a record from Twisted Sister, or to your point, Wasp, or Quiet Riot in the very early 80s, and try and find out where this all got started. As far as bands that are still putting out records today, I mean, let's face it, there's not a whole lot of what you and I would call legacy acts that are still putting out albums today. Because really, again, it's a sad thing, but there is no money in this for them for the most part. And there's not really, I think the only band that sells records today might make a profit off is Bon Jovi, and Bon Jovi hasn't made a hair metal record in 30 years. I don't know if you've heard a recent Bon Jovi record last 2 decades, but it has nothing to do with hair metal, and that's not a slight on Bon Jovi. I mean, more power to him. It's not my style of music, but there are some new things out there. I mean, people would be surprised. Def Leppard put out an album just a few years ago, and I think it's the best thing they've done since Adrenalize. Whitesnake had the Flesh and Blood album 2 years ago. Yes. I think it's fantastic. I think that's my favorite Whitesnake album since Slip of the Tongue, maybe even more. Tesla still routinely puts out albums. So there's new stuff out there, and particularly from, like I said, the new bands that are overseas, there's more music in that vein and style than I can even listen to. And trust me, I listen to a lot of music in that vein and style. But there's just, there's not enough records from the folks that I'd like to hear more music from. Now I understand it. Now, luckily, we have labels like Frontiers Records, if you're familiar with them. And this is a place where a lot of these acts can go that were in that genre of music. And no, they're not going to make money off an album, but if they still have creative juices flowing, they can usually get a record deal with Frontiers, God bless them, and they can break even. You know, if they want to put out a record because they've got something to say, and that's offered us some things. Like in the recent years, we've had new records on Frontiers from Trickster and Nelson and Pretty Boy Floyd as just three examples. Now, people are going to say, who the heck cares? Well, I love those three albums. You know, they're fantastic. So you do get pockets of it, but it's harder to find. So I would point people backwards if they wanted to know what hair metal was all about. I wouldn't necessarily point them to an album that's out today unless I had to, in which case I guess I would just go say, go listen to Flesh and Blood by Whitesnake and follow that up by Public Enemies by Pretty Boy Floyd, and we'll see where they get.
Fair enough. And I didn't mean that to be an unfair question, but
Not at all.
I knew it would be a tough one. So, all right. Well, Christopher, man, thank you for taking the time to talk with me. I really appreciate it. And then
Wayne, it's a pleasure. I really enjoy meeting other fans of the genre. And like I said, it is just a joy for me to talk with other folks who appreciate the music and have a passion for it. And I appreciate your support of the book too.
oh, not a problem. I enjoyed it thoroughly. It was a one-day read for me. I was
Wow.
wow. Okay.
That's impressive. I mean, we're talking about almost a 500-page book here.
It was, well, that's all I did that day was read that book. So yeah. Now it's available both digitally and in print. Yes.
Oh yeah, Amazon you can download to your Kindle, or you can buy a paperback version. You can get it on Amazon, or you can go to my website, hairmetalforever.com, and have a link to it for there. But yeah, you can get it in both versions for sure.
Okay, very good. Now, was it always available in paperback, or did it
Yeah.
start out digitally? It was? Okay.
Absolutely. You know, because it's for us old people, and you know, we like books. We don't like digital reading.
Like stuff we can hold.
Yeah. So
All right. Hey, thanks again, man. Have a great day.
Wayne, thank you. It's my pleasure. Please keep in touch.
I will do it. All
All
right.
right. Talk to you later.
Take care. Bye.
And there she be, the third and final part of the interview with Christopher Hilton, author of the spectacular Rise, Fall, and Rebirth of Hair Metal, which you can get through Amazon or through Christopher's website, hairmetalforever.com. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you feel so inclined. Okay, as always, thank you very much for watching. You guys are awesome, and I'll talk to you soon.
Fuck, what was I going to say? You know, the great thing about putting videos on YouTube is you can say fuck, and I generally bleep it, but you know.
Oh, you can.
Yeah, you can, yeah.
You know, for whatever strange reason, I don't do anything all day and night but think about this music. So there is legitimately something wrong with me, but
Hey, everybody's got something, right? Everybody has got something. Like for me, for example, what I have is not being able to remember what I was going to say. There's a theme going here, you know. Memory isn't the first thing to go. Actually, it's third. Hair comes first, and